Just to get this out of the way at the very beginning, I have no resentment towards Zack Snyder as a person. I'm sure he's a perfectly good guy, but I believe that most of his movies are bad.
No, I'm not sure about that one. I don't know if that checks out.
Now, just like it's not okay to assume that every movie a director has done or is going to do is bad, it is also not remotely okay to worship a director and pretend that everything they do is amazing and perfect and will always be, and he will never have any L's ever.
What? What the f?
Almost every director has at least an L or two under their belt. I think some of Zack Snyder's movies are straight up awful, but I would never attack him personally. I don't know him. Now that doesn't stop his rabid fan base from personally attacking anyone that dares encroach on his territory. DC movies. Just because a director has a fan base, that does not make said fan base a cult. I'm a big fan of plenty of directors. Christopher Nolan, James Gunn, James Wan, Ryan Coogler. I mean, there's a lot of directors that I would say I'm a pretty big fan of. I enjoy most of their movies. Emphasis on most. You don't have to blindly love every movie a director puts out. That's not good for anyone. So far, I honestly believe that James Gunn has just never directed a bad movie. That's just how I feel. I don't think they're all masterpieces, but I think they're all good. I really like most of James Wan's movies, but some of them are definitely a bit messy. Is it Wan or Wan? I don't know, either way I'm gonna make people mad. Look at Joss Whedon before everyone found out he was a huge weirdo. Most people would have told you that he only puts out gold. Well, that's awkward.
This is disgusting. This is awful in every way.
The point is that no matter how much you like a director, they are always capable of making bad movies. I don't go into a James Gunn movie with my opinion already chosen before I even watch the movie. If it's bad, it's bad. If it's good, it's good. This is what makes the Snyder cult a cult. They don't think like this. You can tell this is the case just by taking a trip to everyone's least favorite website, Twitter.
No, I am not the evil, I just misunderstood.
In the Snyder cultist's mind, Superman Legacy is already a bad movie. A movie that isn't even close to coming out is already listed as a failure in their minds. Compare that to Zack Snyder's Justice League, where his cult fan base had already decided that that movie was going to be a masterpiece before it even came out. Then it came out, and it was pretty good. I would hardly call it a masterpiece, but I'm not above giving props to a director that I generally don't like. Snyder cultists will tell you that James Gunn's best movie is worse than Snyder's worst movie. I'm not joking. I've seen this multiple times. This is cult-like behavior. If the news about Superman Legacy coming out was in a world where Snyder was the director of that movie, then it would be lauded by his fans. They'd be praising the addition of Krypto instead of calling it the worst Superman movie ever before we even have a trailer for it. See, the one thing that confuses me the most about the Snyder cult, though, more than anything else, is how did it form? If you remember, Snyder wasn't exactly a huge name for a long time. Sure, Dawn of the Dead and 300 were pretty big, but they didn't launch him into stardom or anything. Even Watchmen was fairly low-key by superhero movie standards. It really wasn't that big of a deal when it came out. No, Snyder didn't join the league of superstar directors with massive public followings until the release of Man of Steel. Man of Steel, in my opinion, is a movie with good ideas, but lackluster execution. It's a movie that you either love or hate. I don't like it because I think it misrepresents Superman.
I am Jesus! I am Jesus!
You can like Man of Steel, that's all fine and good, but you cannot tell me that it is an accurate representation of Superman and then turn around and tell me that Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is bad because that version of Adam Warlock isn't comic accurate. Almost nothing about the Guardians movies are comic accurate, but they're still considered great because they are. Contrary to popular belief, you do not have to be comic book accurate for a comic book movie to be good. So many people praise the older MCU for just how beautifully amazing it is compared to new MCU projects. which a lot of that I feel is just nostalgia more than anything, but that's another video in and of itself. But either way, everybody praises those older MCU movies, saying that they're just great comic book movies overall. But half of them, more than half really, weren't even comic book accurate. Even Infinity War, which most people consider to be the best MCU movie and really one of the best superhero movies ever made, is hardly comic accurate. Almost nothing in Infinity War or Endgame is accurate to what happens in the comics they're based off of. Everything from Thanos' motivations to his eventual defeat are completely different. He doesn't even die in the actual comics. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong from deviating from the source material to make it make sense in this universe. A lot of stuff in the comic books don't exactly translate well to movies. I say all this because I'm fine with Man of Steel being a different version of Superman. I think that's okay to do. I just don't think it works well for this movie because the movie treats it like Superman is how he is in the comics, and he just isn't. And all of the DCEU movies with Superman do this. Funny enough, I think the most accurate scene of Superman in the entire DCEU is when he goes to have lunch with Billy at the end of Shazam, because that's something Superman would actually do. They want you to believe that he's this modest, humble hero who is so human and down to earth, but then the movies don't show him being like this at all. It's a little confused. In the Guardians movies, those characters don't really act how they do in the comics either, but it works for them because these new versions actually mesh well with the world they exist in. So I think it's really funny when the Snyder cultists lambast Gunn for doing things that aren't comic accurate in his movies, but then praise Snyder for doing the exact same thing.
Can you please just not do that?
I kinda got off track, but what I'm trying to get at is I don't understand where this blind love for Snyder came from. Man of Steel was divisive among Superman fans to say the least, but you would think that the people who liked the movie would just say so and move on. Most of the Marvel movies have pretty big fan bases, but I bet you couldn't even name most of the directors other than the Russos or James Gunn because normal people don't worship directors. And then you have the nightmare that is Batman v Superman. This is just a god-awful movie. I know things are subjective, but this movie is just made wrong. If you ask me, this is one of the worst superhero movies of the modern era. So why, oh why, do Snyder cultists insist that it is a masterpiece? I remember people calling it the best superhero movie ever made, while the rest of us were just like... Yeah, I mean, there's some cool action scenes, Affleck is a pretty cool Batman choice, and everyone loves Henry Cavill, and if they don't, they should.
PlayStation or Xbox?
PC.
What's going on, gamers?
But this movie just wasn't put together well at all. If you ask me, I think this is when Snyder really developed his cult. This was the start. Man of Steel was a standalone movie. It wasn't really meant to sprawl out into a big connected universe like the MCU, so there wasn't as much writing on it. BVS, on the other hand, was clearly supposed to be the first instance of the MCU getting any sort of competition. This was 2016. The MCU already had plenty of haters because of the family-friendly nature of a lot of the movies, with tons of misplaced and unnecessary humor everywhere. So now you're telling me there's finally an alternative with the DCEU and it's going to be so much darker? Well, sign me up. This is what birthed the Snyder cult. The fanbase's desperate need for a win, the desperate need for anything to dethrone the MCU as the top dog. It's kind of like the whole Call of Duty killer concept. In the early 2010s, it was common to hate on Call of Duty just no matter what, and praise similar games just because you wanted so badly for COD to be dethroned.
And there's been many people that say Battlefield is better than Modern Warfare 3.
This happens all the time. Call of Duty, Fortnite, Overwatch, Halo. Anytime something gets too big, there's always going to be haters coming out of the woodwork en masse because they want something they like to be better. Have you ever had a friend tell you about a new game that is so much better than the more mainstream game, but then you play it and realize that it's just not very good? You wonder, how could my friend ever believe that this is truly a better game? This is just bad. What's the appeal? Well, now you understand how the Snyder cult works. It doesn't actually matter how good or bad his movies are. He was supposed to be the chosen one to take down the MCU, so they're gonna love him for it. When you see posts like this, it really represents the delusion of the Snyder cult. There was no promise that Zack Snyder was gonna give us this either. I mean, did they seriously think that Snyder would just be given the reins with full creative control? You really believe that would be a good idea? Even the MCU has a ton of different heads coming together in order to create it. I mean, you have a figurehead in Kevin Feige, sure, but the MCU is a collaborative effort. There's nothing to suggest that giving Snyder full creative control over the DCEU would amount to anything that you want. There's no reason to believe he would get any of this, and there's no reason to believe it would have been great. I guess unless you've somehow deluded yourself into thinking Batman v Superman is a masterpiece. Then maybe I could see your way of thinking. What honestly makes Snyder a better director than James Gunn, than the Russos, than Patty Jenkins, than Matt Reeves? Y'all remember when the Snyder cultists attacked Matt Reeves for even touching Batman because they believe so vehemently that Batman belongs to Snyder alone? That is cult-like behavior. I don't know if the DCEU will be better under James Gunn's creative leadership. Sometimes his style can become a little grating. There are episodes of Peacemaker that I just don't like.
What? Brad Pitt or Payne Stewart or Doug the Pug, Khloe Kardashian, the Red Tiger from Voltron, Fran Tarkenton, Joe Montana, Joe Montana.
And from what I understand, Gunn had almost 100% control over that show. But then again, he had 100% control over the Suicide Squad, and that movie ended up being really, really good. The point is that I'm not gonna sit here and pretend that, oh, the DCEU was saved because James Gunn is in charge, because that's just silly. Am I hopeful? Yeah, but he is fully capable of L's just like any director. Snyder's capable of W's just like any director. But for the Snyder cultists to say that the DCEU is going to be terrible under Gunn and only Snyder can save it, that certainly sounds like cult speak to me.